Aloha, empowered entrepreneur. And today I want to talk about building trust so more people buy from you. Now, we all know about knowing, liking, and trusting. And the more that your client knows, likes, or trusts you, the more they are to buy from you. And if they trust you, there's an increase in sales, there's greater customer loyalty, and there's even more positive word of mouth promotion, right? So, just building off of my book, Your Referral Equation, there's the idea that they're going to be talking more about you and in a positive way as a result of trusting you. Trust is very important when it comes to sales and marketing. So one of the ways that I have several different ways here that we can help to further trust in further build trust with our community so that people are more likely to buy from you. The first one is transparency. Now, transparency is is definitely an interesting one. It's one that I either see companies doing really, really well or really, really not so well. And more transparency doesn't necessarily mean better. So here, transparency, from my perspective, is to communicate openly and honestly with customers about your products and services, to being upfront about any potential issues or challenges, to really just there's a saying in negotiation that basically pointing or identifying a negative will actually diffuse the negative. How to actually diffuse and so being open and honest and completely transparent about your products and services. What is it that they're going to get? What is it that it's not? Who is it that they're not, that it's not for? What, where should they be? First of all, if you do, let's just back up a second. If you have the idea of your ideal customer, and you know the particular problem that you're helping them with at the time that you're helping them with that particular problem, well, then you know where they're at. Okay. And so to me, the transparency at this point is, hey, this is for you if you are at this point, if you're looking for this, if this is, what you want to achieve, and then just being completely transparent about it. And it's like, okay, here's what it's going to take. Here's what this is involved. Here's where you can be by the end of this. Here's where you most likely won't be by the end of this, but you're going to be further. You're going to be further to your goal. So if you want to actually get your result working with me, here's what it actually takes. Or you can keep trying to do whatever you've been doing, right? So it's just level setting and being transparent and being clear on any restrictions on products or services, any um, so that there aren't any surprises. Is really the only surprises that I like in a business are ones that benefit the customer. Ones where the customer goes, "Oh my gosh, I get this too, I get that too," or "Oh, you're doing that for me," or "Oh, there's this." Those are the surprises I like. Transparency should really be so that there aren't any surprises that the customer is actually like negatively surprised about. And not hiding things in terms and conditions. Hey, if you're going to do an offer but they had to buy the offer from you a certain way or by a certain time, make it super clear that the purchase has to come from this method, and you have to do, just make it super clear, right? And then just navigating any potential issues or challenges. People are like, well, hey, if I'm a new company and I'm a product business and I post on my shopping cart that, due to supply chain, it can take 6 to 8 weeks, are people going to abandon the cart? Maybe maybe, but those that buy should be level set to know that it might take 6 to 8 weeks for a delivery, and they're okay with it. And at least you don't have to deal with refunds after the fact, or potentially shipping the product later, and then people come back to you and they're like, well, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to have this a month ago. Right. So it's like, it's just being transparent about what those things are. Like I tell people, up front with any of my programs, my higher end programs, what's involved. And and just, yeah, it's like, here's why this is here, though. Here's what's involved, and the reason why this is actually key to your success. And the absence of this, the fact that you haven't done or had this before, is why you're still stuck. And so I just want to let you know that this is in here, but it's in here because this is the missing piece, right? And then they go do it. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, then they encounter it and they realize if they just get through that, it's like, okay, then everything's good. So transparency can definitely go a long way to build trust. The other one is to deliver on promises. So consistently meeting or exceeding customer expectations, following through on commitments. And so if you agree to something, right, it's being able to stick with that. I treat my calendar, my calls, as basically I'm a commitment. And so if somebody schedules a call with me, I expect them to show up on time. And I expect myself to show up on time. I mean, barring emergencies, barring unexpected technical difficulties. Um, I know technology can sometimes take a little while to get started, so I plan accordingly to make sure that I'm on time, right? And following through. And usually, if somebody schedules a call with me, if it's a free call, which I do very little of these days, but if it's a free call and then they're late or they don't show up, I work to reschedule it, well, just once. And if they're late to that one or they don't show up, I don't even re-engage. So sometimes what I'll do for if it was a free call and they didn't show up, I send them an email. Hey, I want to make sure we had the time zone right. Here, here's what I you had requested a call to talk about this. I want to make sure I can help you, and then we had the time zone right. Um, you know, would you like to reschedule this? And if so, just whatever the case may be, and then go from there. But I don't do a follow-up email in the case that they missed the second one. And I really don't have problems with people missing calls if they paid for them. So a lot of my calls are paid for at this point. I do still have a couple of free options out there as of the time I'm recording this, but those are I'm quickly taking them down as my calendar continues to fill up with more and more paid appointments. So following through on commitments, making sure that that what you say is involved or what you're going to do, you do. A corollary to this is not necessarily saying what the deliverable is necessarily if you're doing a service-based business unless you have all the inputs. Because sometimes in copywriting, when I write somebody's copy, I'm like, okay, well, based on that, this is what I would do. But then they give me more information, and it's like, and then they get the copy back, and they're like, well, how come the copy's a little bit different than what you? I'm like, well, because you gave me this additional information over the last week, it changed, what the exact deliverable is. So what I like to do now is just make sure that I have as much of the inputs up front, to indicate what the deliverable would be, so that there's nothing that's unexpected. Right. And just really, keeping your word is kind of the gist here. And so I'm very careful with what I commit to. The next another way you can build trust is to convey expertise. So positioning yourself or your business as experts in the field that you're in. You can do that by providing valuable information, by offering solutions to common problems, by demonstrating your skills and knowledge. The more you're able to help them with where they're at, get to that next step, the more the expertise is conveyed. Now, you're not just listing expertise here. You're demonstrating the expertise, and that's the distinction, right? So I'm not just telling you about products and services that I have or that I've sold or the clients or anything. I'm actually I'm actually demonstrating here's this information and here's how it can be used. This sometimes I'll do this on sales calls sometimes, right? And one of the ways that I'll incorporate it is by listing out the steps it takes to pull off what the client's asking. Right? It's like, okay, well then here's what yeah, okay, this all makes sense. This is something that we could do together. Here's the first thing I'll do, the second thing I'll do, the third thing I'll do, right? And then they usually are like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize all those steps were involved." Oh, that sets up a really um nice transition into talking about the investment, right? But I'm also demonstrating expertise, right? Because oh man, there was a I worked I had a lawyer doing some business work for me, and I said to him, I said, I have this IT thing where sometimes people think it's just a click of a button, and I'm like, sometimes like you got to write the code, you got to think that, like there's all just to make the button. And he said, Tom, that it's the same thing in the legal field. And I said, what do you mean? He said, sometimes people will hire us to write a letter, and they get a 3-line letter back, and they're like, how did this take 3 hours? And why is it this much money? And I'm like, yeah, about that. I'm like, help me understand that. How come it does take that long? And he said, well, one of the things we do, and this is my interpretation of what he said. Check with, your attorney and all that. I'm not an attorney, so this is just what I remember him telling me, and remember how it came off to me was that he said, we look at the thing, we have to look at the language, we have to make sure that there's no opportunity for misinterpretation, that it's conveying the exact message we want. He said, depending on the matter, he's like, sometimes we have to consider, hey, if this document is used in litigation, is there any way that it could be used against us? Is it clear? And all these things go into that to come up with those 3 lines. So there's a lot of editing, a lot of rewriting, a lot of that. And I said, oh wow, that's really, really fascinating. And like hadn't even thought about those things, but he was able, to demonstrate his expertise in writing letters. So now if he came back and he wrote me a 3-line letter for however much, if he had to do that, I would know that his expertise went into that, right? And so it's conveyed. So there's different ways of doing that. Another way that you can uh, um, build trust here is to listen to feedback. And listen doesn't necessarily mean to act on it. You do want to take appropriate action to address any issues, but you want to demonstrate that you heard it, right? So encouraging customers to provide feedback, actively listening to their concerns, and then addressing, correcting. I had I knew someone who would actually take the feedback, and then depending on what he worked in corporate, depending on what he would implement, he would actually, if he implemented the feedback that was, if the feedback that he got was implemented, then that was fine. Like the person who gave him the feedback could see that the feedback was implemented. If the feedback wasn't implemented, or the opposite was implemented, then what was he actually would bring those people back into his office one by one and explain the situation. And he said a lot of times, he said people that they were like, dude, yeah, you're running this thing, you decide. And he's like, well, I wanted you to know that I heard your feedback. I wanted you to know that what you shared with me was important, and that it was factored in, and that this is why we had to go this other way, and everything. And so he would demonstrate that. I mean, I had a a situation where it's like, okay, uh, if I if I comment on or tag somebody, or tag a company like on a social media site, and they don't answer, it's like, okay, did they even hear it? Versus there was a salad shop that I used to frequent back when I lived back east, and I knew pretty much everybody that worked there. Like I knew their first names and stuff, and they knew me, and they knew exactly what my order was all the time, and it was fantastic. And I said, how come you don't have a salad that contains, and then I kind of named a few different things, and it kind of does it this way and whatnot. And the manager there told me, we don't actually pick these salads. It's all, corporate, da da da. Can you go to this website and fill out your suggestion? I'm like, sure. So I did. And then a few weeks later, the manager, like I was back in the store pretty frequently though, but then a few weeks later, the manager was like, you did fill out the website, huh? And I'm like, yeah, why? So because they sent I think it was the general manager of that area there to evaluate if it made sense to put that kind of salad on the menu. I said, oh, wow, that's interesting. Now they didn't tell me, the corporate people didn't tell me, but the manager did. And in doing that, the manager conveyed that the company had at least paid attention, right? I had done the same thing with another restaurant chain where I said, "How come you don't have this, or you're doing this, or but there's this issue, da da da." And all the things I mentioned, they fixed. They fixed on the website. They fixed in the app. They fixed, and I was like, "Oh, they didn't respond to me, right? But they corrected them." So it demonstrated that they listened. And there was another company where I gave them feedback, and I'm like, "Here's how we're doing this," and then the they responded with, "Well, you have no idea how much of a debate you stirred up in our company." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Well, because there's the people that are more so leaning on implementing it this way versus this was a software product, and then versus the other people that are like, yeah, I think we should do what Tom said." And I'm like, "Well, that's interesting." I said, and they're like, "Well, I think we kind of landed on not doing it that way, but for these other reasons." And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever works. I mean, I just thought I'd give you some ideas." They're like, "Yeah, well, you definitely have people here that think that what you just said is actually a really good thing, and that we should do that." So they still demonstrated that they listened to feedback. And so as a business owner, it's allowing feedback to, and then also demonstrating that you've listened to it. That I think is definitely going to build some build some trust there. Another way is to be consistent. So making sure that your brand image, your messaging is all consistent. Um, and I've been refining my messaging a bit, so things are in flux. I'm just coordinating all this. So as of time of recording this, one of the drivers for making things consistent for me is also to further that trust in the brand and me. Of course, also ensure that your products or services meet the same high quality standards every time, right? So especially that first entry product or service, right? Sometimes entrepreneurs will think that their low ticket or entry level product or service is like, well, it's the cheapest thing that they're going to buy. Da, da, da. Well, it may be the thing that, see, it needs to be a thing that demonstrates your brand. It needs to be the thing that they go, oh my gosh, if they did this for just a $5 product or whatever, then what else am I going to get? And then as I believe I talked about before, in a in another piece of content, that at this time, more and more people are thinking, okay, well, it's like, is it that low ticket because of the quality though, or is it that low ticket just to get you in the door, sell you something more, right? So I've been experimenting with different price structures for different products and services just to figure out, okay, is the market appetite changing, and where are they going? Because sometimes people are be like one in the market might be like, oh yeah, it's only 4.95, so it's really, um, it's a really great deal. And then the other side of the market might be like, it's only 4.95. Why? Right? And so, I mean, a lead magnet or a low ticket offer is cheap as an entrepreneur. It's because you want to help offset the cost it takes to acquire a customer, right? And all that. And that's where transparency comes in. In my business products, um, for the most part, I mean, I have a lot of stuff out there right now, so it's trying to remember if every offer I do this in or not. But generally, it's like, hey, if the customer of that particular business product is aware of the fact that you have to offset your marketing costs and stuff like that, now I might even put that transparently in the actual copy. Hey, why is this so cheap? Well, I would give it to you for free as a lead magnet, but then I would just lose a lot of money faster because it cost me such and such a money per lead, to acquire a lead. And what I need to do is actually offset the ad costs. So therefore, I'm going to charge something. Plus, I want to know that I really do want to help you, and I want to know who really really wants that help. And so, if you're going to just spend 4.95, which is cheaper than a lot of coffees and stuff these days, then then at least I know that you're serious about this particular thing, right? So it's completely transparent, and it's explaining the justification. It's like, well, why is it not free? Well, why is it not $4,000? Well, I never actually I might want to split test. Hey, if you actually think it should be free, go here. If you think that it should be worth $2,000, go here, and then take them to pages where they could get the 4.95 offer for free or the 4.95 offer for $2,000, and and see what happens. Um, I, Human behavior wise, more people might just be willing to buy the $5, or maybe they'll do the free one. Um, but it'd be interesting to split test that. So, okay, so there's being consistent. And then another way to build trust is to show empathy, showing customers that you understand and care about their needs. demonstrate you're committed to helping them. You can really do that the more you can articulate where they're at, and what is it they need, where they're struggling, why they're struggling. Demonstrating through experience and that type of thing. And then let's see, we have a few more. Being reasonably available. So for people that are either solopreneurs or their personal brand, and even for being reasonably available applies there. But even for regular businesses, making it easy for customers to contact you, not necessarily personally, but at least to engage with your business, and then to have somebody who's representing your business to respond promptly to their inquiries. Now, here's the thing with this is, and it goes on to the next one, which is excellent customer service, is making sure that if they're engaging with you or they're contacting you, that you're paying attention to what they're saying, reading their inquiries, not just crunching through. Because I'm trying to talk to this company that I spend lots of money with, and it was just a disaster trying to like their chat sent me from, like, the number in line was going down, only then it went up, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. So I called them, then the automated system kept me on hold for 10 minutes, and then it dropped the call, it with a message. It was like, hey, please da 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 da, and then just dropped the call. So then I sent them an email, and then they demonstrated they weren't reading the emails. I had to go back several times with them on it, and then the problem still isn't fixed. So I'm like, I mean, this is getting to a point where I'm almost like, okay, maybe I should just not do business with you, right? Because it's not providing, it's not letting me contact them to get my inquiry answered, and it's not providing excellent customer service. Now, excellent customer service, treating your customers with respect, respecting their time and whatnot, and going above and beyond to help them within what's reasonable. And really, one of the ways that I like to think of customer service is what a manager of mine when I worked in customer service at the university when I went to college, that taught me, which was, give them something more than what they had than when they came here. Hopefully, something that helps them better off, like better get closer to their solution, right? So if somebody came in and their ID wasn't scanning, anymore, then it was like, hey, like, your ID isn't scanning. That would just be a statement of fact. Because, like, your ID isn't scanning. Here's where you need to go get your ID fixed, or reissued. Da da da. Just do this. Here are their hours, whatever. Right. So they have more information. Or if they came to you with a question and you didn't know the answer, how can you help them get closer to the answer? And so that's what I always like to do there. A couple, two more ways to help with building in trust: positive reputation, consistently delivering quality products or services, being active in your community or industry, right? So just making sure um, that you're delivering quality, and that you're active. I mean, people reach out to me, and I do my best to respond at this point. And Yeah, so it's creating that reputation. And then the last one is being reliable, being dependable, following through on your commitments, being trustworthy in the interactions, right? So that's just saying, hey, doing things that allow them to rely on you. It's like, hey, who's going to be able to help me with this? And then my name comes up quite a bit. It's like, hey, who can I go to that's going to? I had that with a client not too long ago. They said, oh, I was having this problem and having that problem. I was like, oh, I got to call Tom. Tom will be able to help me. It's like, I'm like, wow, okay. Like that helps significantly. And to me, that's probably more in line with what I refer to as a referral hook, which is in my book, Your Referral Equation. And so, but anyway, so these are many different ways that you can build trust with your community, with people that so that they're more likely to do business with you, more likely to do more business with you, more likely to tell other people about you. So if you do have any questions or comments about this, please put them below. If you like this video and would like to see more like it, please subscribe. And as always, aloha, ahui ho. I'll talk with you again soon. Take care.